Welcome to the next one-to-one in 20 with me, Paul Britton, Chief Executive for Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. In this session, I'm interviewing Professor Robert Van de Noort. He's the Vice Chancellor for the University of Reading, and we get some real candid insights into just how concerned government should be for the university sector across the UK, the impact that the pandemic has had upon campus life, and also some personal reflections by Robert on his leadership role in taking the university safely through what has been the most challenging period in its recent history. I hope you enjoy the session.
So hello Robert, a very, very warm welcome to this session with me. This is our one-to-one in 20 minutes and we've got a huge amount to cover, so thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
I thought I would start with your core audience, if you like, your students. I know that your colleagues have been working incredibly hard to ensure that summer exams have taken place. So perhaps just some reflections on that to kick off, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a tumultuous time, I would say. But working in a university, I have the benefit of working with lots of clever people. And you know, whilst it has been really challenging, I've seen so many good ideas and innovations rising to the surface. Things that we probably would have wanted to do and would have normally taken years, and now just happened virtually overnight. That, you know, that has really helped to look after our students in many different ways. So, you know, we went from a face-to-face teaching organization to a fully online organization effectively in 2 days. And I'm sure not everything will have worked perfectly, but you know, overall it worked pretty well. And the student feedback I get on the best elements of having gone online are really positive. Students who felt maybe a little bit intimidated to speak up in class felt that they could come out in a virtual environment and have flourished under these circumstances. Students with other challenges, disabilities, who suddenly find themselves at a level playing field with their peers. That is quite interesting. And with the exams, I mean, I've always been a great advocate of doing kind of authentic examinations, to do exams where you don't just cram a lot of knowledge in your head and then put it back on paper, but actually where you start to apply everything you've learned into a more real world environment. And we've actually been forced to do these things very, very quickly. And we just, as you said quite rightly, Paul, we've finished our exam period. We know that the overwhelming majority of students have fully engaged with this new world. I accept that for some it was really challenging. Students who may not have the right environment at home to write these exams in a quiet room with good Wi-Fi connection. But you know, overall, it has worked very well, and we can see it a bit in the exam results that have gone up. And I think students have just like the colleagues, students have really stepped up to the plate. And after, I think, an initial reaction, which is, what is this all about? Actually started to realize that you know, there's a world, there's a future for them after this, and just make best use of this lockdown to do your revisions as well as you can, and to do your exams as well as you can, and try to come out better than you otherwise would have performed. So I wouldn't say it's all wonderful news, but what keeps me going is these new stories, these bits of information of really positive engagement, positive results for students. And you know, we're in this together and we'll come out of it together. That's how it feels.
And I've heard this word so many times in the interviews I've been running around, agility, and how important agility is. And I think the university no doubt has been put in an impossible position where you're looking to make balancing that, maintaining academic standards, but also overcoming the practicalities of ensuring that you keep momentum in education.
Yeah,
and the solidarity, as you say, that can come out with that as well. So
it's quite funny, isn't it, Paul? Because I wouldn't have described the university as a particularly agile organization normally. You know, it is because there are so many regulatory limitations to how fast we can change. But you know, the coronavirus has given us a bit of a freedom to be more agile and to find solutions to problems that in the past we would have probably found that the regulations that sit around everything we do just too hard to overcome. So it is a bit of positivity around this all.
And it has been challenging. I've picked up the articles, I've listened to the radio interviews you've given recently around the challenges to the university in terms of income from international students in particular. And the university, Reading University, but of course others across the UK have especially recently, their contribution as anchor institutions, as multipliers to the economy and contributors to society, that's now well respected now. So how concerned should government be? How concerned should others be around the real impact that COVID-19 has had upon universities and your university?
No, I think I would say government needs to be pretty concerned if it wants to retain all the societal benefits that universities bring. Now, I think most universities will survive whatever comes next. But you know what? International students, you mentioned them, they're really quite important to us. We like to think that we address global challenges, climate change, pandemic, and you need to have a global reach to find solutions for it. It's no point trying to do that just in your own backyard. But the international students provide us with an income and therefore an opportunity to do more research that we can't monetize. It is there for the good of society, for the benefit of society. And I think an approach where it is, universities will be all right one way or the other, without understanding the contributions we make on all kinds of areas, I think will be a mistake in the long term. I would say the same for the University of Reading. I am not concerned about our existence. That's not what we're talking about. But there are so many things we do in the local community, in global research, that is really valuable, where you just have to look that bit harder, whether we can still afford to do everything we do in the future. And I think something will be lost, and that is not very tangible, it's difficult to express in pounds, but if something will be lost, and I think we'll regret it in the future. Much of our research takes a very, very long time to become that kind of really top world-class type of research. And once you break it, it will take decades to build it back up.
So there's a civic contribution that universities make, that the University of Reading makes, and I think that is well understood amongst the Chamber of Commerce business community, because a lot of the businesses that we work with, also have that civic mindset as well. You mentioned, I'm bouncing around a bit here, but you mentioned also that the global impact around the pandemic, and of course you have colleagues and institution in Malaysia as well. So just some brief reflections upon how that facility, that establishment has been impacted.
Yeah, so I think Malaysia has a campus in Malaysia very similar to us. They had to shift to online teaching and examination in a very short period of time. Colleagues have there now started to move back to campus, and the intention, just like here in Reading, is that the new academic year will be mainly face-to-face and blended teaching put together to make best use of the facilities we have. Hope that we can just go back to a degree of normality as we want to do. I think Malaysia is slightly different. I think the lockdown was very serious there. We could always exercise, and they couldn't. I think we've all suffered in similar ways, and hopefully we can come out in a shared way as well.
Well, I read one of the reports that I read was you used the phrase a return to activity, not necessarily determined by return to campus. And so, I mean, set that out a little bit more for us in terms of, what if I was on campus today, what that might look like, but also what that, you mentioned the online learning, but how else have you managed to keep activities going?
Yeah, so in a strange way, sometimes people talk about that universities have closed. Well, we never closed, just like schools never closed. Throughout this period, we've had over 1,000 students. They're living on our halls of residences. Students who couldn't or won't go home or had good reasons not to go home. But we also have research projects that have continued through this period. And government was quite clear that where we do long-term research that should not be interrupted, where we work with animals that should not be interrupted. So quite a lot of activity still been ongoing, and it helps then us thinking how we return back to that, back to campus. So what we've learned is that good online teaching can be done, but it is no substitute for regular social interface activity. Sometimes you need to be in a group to have that conversation running where you can interrupt one another, and you don't cause Zoom to all go wild on you. And so what we're trying to do for the new academic year is to make the best use of both. So the core curriculum, the stuff that that you would normally sit in a lecture room and a lecturer or a professor will give you the framework of learning. It's a bit of a one-way direction. That's the kind of stuff we are starting to put more and more online. It creates then the opportunity to use these spaces to have more interactive sessions, so the questions and answers, what we call the flipped classroom, where you do your reading first and actually you come now back into the classroom to ask the questions and to start applying what you've learned into a real world example. So we're going to use that blended world of doing more and more on campus. And and being a student in the UK, quite rightly, is not just about learning things and developing skills. It is also about making new friends. Lots of other things I won't go in, but that social element is really, really important. So we want to have our facilities open as much as can be done using social distancing. We're lucky to have a large green campus with lots of sports fields. And we need to use that. We want our halls of residence to be open, because they're creating those new bonds of friendship that students will be, they will look for that after having been locked down for 6 months or more. So all these elements are there, and we're building hopefully a different kind of student experience that has bits of innovation, bits of things you can't do anymore, which we all regret, but that hopefully overall will still be a very, very good experience indeed.
We're in our 100th day of lockdown. It's 30th of June today for our audience here, and I can really relate to what you were saying there about the purpose of your organisation, and as a chamber, we're not dissimilar to that. A chamber of commerce, a room to do business, and much of that has changed for us temporarily. And you mentioned a blended solution. I think for chambers, we will be doing the same, perhaps for forever and a day now, in terms of looking at the learning that's. We'll provide solutions to our members and our customers that we've learned is now more efficient for them to be able to do it using this very intuitive technology. But I am looking forward to the day, and it is coming soon, touching wood here, that we're in a position to be able to meet and greet as we're accustomed to. And I'm sure you're looking forward to that buzz that you get when you're back on campus and hearing the buzz of the student community in and around you. Let's talk about the contribution that the university has made. You mentioned that you have not stopped working, and there's been a huge contribution from colleagues to a huge range of projects, both from a research point of view, but more practically locally as well. So a few words around that, because there are too many to mention. So perhaps one or two would be fantastic.
Yeah. I'll just a couple of examples that stick in my mind. We were approached for whether we had spare webcams by initially the Royal Brompton Hospital, and they were saying, we were short of PPE in those early weeks of the coronavirus, and if you can have a clear webcam looking at the patient and the instrumentation, it often means that doctors, nurses don't need to go into the room. They can just monitor you from a distance. And of course, also we have this real problem that relatives couldn't, see their own infected relatives, and so the idea of the webcam, it's very simple, but we just had 100 spare lying around, and we gave 50 to the Royal Brompton, 50 to the Royal Berks, and and it is a simple thing that we could do very, very quickly. We just forgot all the processes. Here you are, you keep the NHS staff safe, and you allow relatives to be able to see and maybe talk to each other. And the other one is something that we probably should have done earlier, but we developed the idea of community champions, our own students, often from very different parts of the world, connecting to charities in Reading and helping them with digital information. And it can be as simple as, government guidance is only made available in English. Can we find somebody who speaks Arabic and can help local people, translate information? Or, forms that are there, difficult to fill in because you don't have the right computer gear. There are very few of my students who don't have the knowledge and know-how and the insight to help people. And it is just a great idea. We didn't have to bring them physically together. It could all be done remotely. Innovations like that, the necessity creates inspiration, and it's really quite, I look back at it thinking, this is really great. This is what we can do, and we do it.
No, I can see on your face the impact that's had on you. And let's talk about you for a moment and your leadership role. And I pose this question to the leaders of organisations I've spoken to in these sessions. And what do you feel has been the most important aspect to your role as a leader through this pandemic and through the crisis, Robert?
First and foremost, to be true to what we are as a university. What is our purpose? Focus on that. Communicate an awful lot. Don't take anything for granted. At one point, somebody said to me how nice it was to see my face. It was kind of a shock, but you realize that when you see each other all the time, you take that for granted. But when you sit at home for 4 weeks, it's actually quite nice to see the university or senior colleagues in the university, to just talk to you and take time. It is also setting out, I think, the way we work with colleagues, accepting that these are unprecedented times, and we've used that word many times, but that nobody has the answers. Nobody could possibly know back in March what would happen in the next 3 and 4 months. And therefore you need to rely on the expertise of all your colleagues, be flexible, accept sometimes to be proven wrong, as I have, but create a culture where you can be challenged, but where you all accept that this is a really strange time. And just by trying to work together and stay open, accept sometimes that the decisions you thought you had made were the wrong ones, and then work with everybody to go back to what is the purpose we're trying to deliver. Stay flexible, stay open, and keep listening. And also then again, go back to everybody and communicate where you are. But it is the culture you create, I think, around this. I would say I'm normally somebody who looks at absolute performance over best endeavor. I think during the pandemic we swapped it around a bit, and I remember saying to colleagues, if you sit at home and you have children that you have to homeschool, it really must be tough. And I'm just asking you to do your best. I'm not going to sit in judgment what you can and can't do. So this swapping of kind of what are the principal ways of managing an organization is quite challenging, but I get a sense that been all right? That people feel that it has gone as well as it could be, I think.
Well, I'm absolutely certain that approach, that change in approach, will bode well for your colleagues and for your university, Robert. I've really enjoyed the session. I'm sure all of our audience will take a huge amount away from that, regardless of sector, regardless of size of business. And I just want to wish the very best to you, to all your colleagues, and of course to your students. And you'll be smiling again very soon when you hear that buzz that I mentioned on the campus, I'm sure at the start of the next academic year. So thank you for joining the Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for your support, Robert. All the best.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.